Hey everyone, this is Cam Barnard. Welcome all you punctual and early bird type folks. We will kick it off and get cracking at exactly 1 minute past the hour. Lots to talk about. Excited to do it. We'll see you shortly. Alrighty, welcome everyone to the VertiGIS Studio Road Ahead webinar. It is Thursday, September 22nd, 2022, at least here in the Pacific time zone. It might be tomorrow where you are. Delighted that you're able to join me today. You can see the instructions on the screen. I do love your questions. For those of you who've sent questions in the past, thank you. We may get a chance to do some of them live at the end, but if not, I try really, really hard to get those questions answered this afternoon or tomorrow morning at the latest. So let's kick it off. Lots of interesting things to cover. All right, so now for something completely different. Was putting this material together for you today, and I thought, you know what would be fascinating? Let's take a completely different approach to presenting content. And so, as I'm sure you are aware, VertiGIS is an Esri Platinum partner. We're super dependent on Esri. They're the underpinnings for everything that we do. We spend lots of time interacting with Esri and talking with them, attending events, co-presenting, all kinds of stuff. Coming off the Esri UC, now is some time to think. I thought it would be interesting to cover some of the most common questions that we hear about Esri technology and how they affect VertiGIS Studio. And we'll even do some demos along the way. So that's the plan. Away we go. You'll see it in this format. What about Esri? And these are some of the most common questions that we hear about Esri Tech and how we support it. So let's kick it off with this. At the user conference in particular, or the Dev Summit back in March, Esri spent a fair bit of time talking about ArcGIS Enterprise and Kubernetes. And so the question has come up, well, what about VertiGIS Studio? How does that work? So let's just cover the basics. ArcGIS Enterprise and Kubernetes. Kubernetes is an alternate way to deploy ArcGIS Enterprise functionality. It can be automated upgrading, automated scaling. Can treat ArcGIS Enterprise as more of a set of microservices. It is out of reach for many customers. It does require a certain degree of sophistication in the IS and IT department and probably a familiarity with Kubernetes already. And really, this is about a deployment option and not about licensing. So you are an organization that already has 10 ArcGIS Enterprise core licenses and you want a more flexible way of deploying it. That is kind of what is in view here. So what about VertiGIS Studio? Well, VertiGIS Studio works well with Kubernetes deployed ArcGIS Enterprise. Just so you know, it's pretty fully compatible. Why? Mostly because we rely on talking to endpoints more than the architecture of how something is deployed. There is an exception there, which is the VertiGIS Studio Access Control product. That is more of an on-prem enterprise deployment option, and we don't yet have a pattern for doing that with a Kubernetes deployed ArcGIS Enterprise. And the other question that often comes back is, hey, what about VertiGIS Studio? Are you guys planning this anytime soon? Short answer is no. We're going to keep options open for future, but there's no immediate plans for us to create a Kubernetes deployment option for VertiGIS Studio. So that is ArcGIS Enterprise and Kubernetes. Another common question we get is, hey, starting to hear a lot about BIM, the Building Information Model, and ArcGIS. VertiGIS Studio, what are the plans there? So I think this is an interesting one. BIM is most applicable in our VertiGIS FM or facilities management product line as part of the overall building maintenance and building visualization use cases. Now, that product, that in-market product, which I'm actually going to show you a couple quick slides of, VertiGIS FM, is actually a certified BIM compliant solution. So they've got very deep knowledge of BIM, and we do expect to see some knowledge and use cases from that primary focus begin to appear in other VertiGIS products over time, including perhaps VertiGIS Studio, but right now the primary focus is in VertiGIS FM. So what is VertiGIS FM? If you've never heard of it before, it is an in-market product, mostly deployed in Europe, but actually customers all over the world for doing infrastructure and facility management. It is all about providing the interfaces you need to do comprehensive facility and infrastructure management on one platform. And this is everything from, you can see, building maintenance, buildings visualization, maintenance, managing contracts and renewals, energy consumption, green spaces, street lights. It is a very comprehensive solution, but that solution is very focused on that BIM space. If VertiGIS FM is something that you're like, oh, I haven't heard of that before, guys, that's new to me, I'd love to learn more. Our account management team in the Victoria office has been trained up on this solution. We're familiar with it now, and it is available in North America, so please feel free to contact us. We would love to talk to you about it. What about Esri? So let's talk about ArcGIS Indoors. This was, I would say, a newish announcement at the Esri UC in July, particularly the ArcGIS IPS, or the Indoor Positioning System, I think was a new announcement from my point of view at the Esri UC. So what is our plan around that? Well, we see that the biggest connection point being VertiGIS Studio Mobile. So being able to support a level switcher that lets you move between different levels is something that I think you will see in the next while within mobile. And then we are taking a close look at the indoor positioning systems that Esri has just announced. We believe that there's a good use case for it in our VertiGIS Studio Mobile solution. So our current focus on indoors and ArcGIS Indoor Positioning System is really on the mobile team side. Timing very much to be determined, but this is one of a couple of features that the team is looking at digging into over the next months. And since we're talking about mobile and updates to mobile, something I really wanted to draw your attention to and actually encourage you to give us feedback on is in the latest version of Studio Go, or VertiGIS Studio Mobile Go, this is the app in the App Store, we introduced a new navigation system. And I'm actually going to take the time to demo this for you. So normally when you start Studio Go, you see something like this. You can see there's this new option here that you can opt into to preview the new app selector. When you do that, it's telling you basically you got to restart the app, which is fine because that's easy to do. And we are now going to get a brand new interface for Studio Go. I'll go ahead and sign in. And this new interface is quite a bit different than the old one. Rather than showing you all content, it's focused more on curated lists of content that you may be interested in. You can see it knows who I am and where I am on the home screen. And of course, we've got a great search interface. And I'm going to go ahead and see if I can find something interesting to favorite. Let's do this just for the sake of argument. So basically, it's just a search filter-based interface, keywords, titles, all that kind of stuff, so you can easily find content. Behind the scenes, a ton of work was done to refactor this and make the API questions to the portal efficient, so it's nice and fast and easy. Let's do a service request based example for, you can see how quick that is. And then when you're not in search mode, you're basically just looking at your curated list of apps. These are the things that you interact with regularly and want access to on a regular basis. All this to say, if you haven't poked at this yet, please do. If you're a Studio Go user, try this new interface out. Tell us what you think. We would love to hear from you. Currently, this is not the default. You have to opt in, but sometime in the next couple of releases, our intent is to replace the current default experience with this experience. So if you've got feedback, suggestions, questions, concerns, this is an awesome time to jump in and tell us more about that. All right, let's keep going. Let's talk about Experience Builder. So first of all, ArcGIS Experience Builder, as you know, in the last year, we've released a version of workflow and printing from VertiGIS Studio, widgets compatible with ArcGIS Experience Builder. Experience Builder, a little while back, I guess it was, let's call it several months ago, released a 1.9 version of Experience Builder. We are in process right now of updating the workflow and the printing widgets to work with that version. There's quite a few changes behind the scenes there, so it's been a little bit of work, but it is coming soon. We are also currently verifying our widgets compatibility with the updated widget-capable version of Experience Builder that is shipping with ArcGIS Enterprise 11. So you may recall the pattern often is there's a developer edition of something that you can download and use yourself. We support that one today with Experience Builder. Then there's the version of Experience Builder that ships natively as part of Enterprise. Historically, that did not support widgets, but at ArcGIS Enterprise 11, it does support widgets, and so we're just testing to make sure everything works with that. So pretty soon, if this is something that you're waiting for, keep an eye open for our announcements. We will let you know when it's available, and there will be an updated version of our widgets for Experience Builder 1.9. But wait, that's not all. There's more to talk about when it comes to Experience Builder, and that is this challenging decision of how do I decide which to use? Do I use Experience Builder? Do I use VertiGIS Studio Web? And this question comes up. It's a totally fair question. There is a sense in which these two viewer frameworks compete against each other. And what I mean by that is for an individual web GIS application, you kind of have to decide, is this going to be an Experience Builder app, or is this going to be a VertiGIS Studio Web app? And you're going to forget I ever said this. Of course, theoretically, you could actually embed VertiGIS Studio Web inside an Experience Builder app, or even an Experience Builder app inside VertiGIS Studio Web, because both frameworks would support the embedding of content. But you don't want to do that. What you want to do is choose the one that's best for your need. Now, an organization, of course, can have some number of Experience Builder apps and some number of VertiGIS Studio Web apps living side by side. But how do you make the choice about what technology to use? So this is a set of slides that I built. I think it was in July, and it was just helping me think through the things that I commonly talk about and say to people when they're asking me this question. I tried to codify it down, and I thought it would be helpful to share with you. So here we go. So differentiating. So on the surface, they're pretty similar, and that can make choosing it difficult. The similarities might lead you to a place where you're like, well, is it just about what tools one has or the other? Personally, I wouldn't use that as a primary comparison matrix because both in Experience Builder and in web, these things change release by release by release. So today, making a decision solely based on this tool is available or not might be a pretty short-term decision. So here are some of the things that I think are important when making this decision. So first, similarities, and there are a lot of them. They're both based on Esri's JavaScript 4.x API. They both have both a presentation and a visualization framework with control over layout to some degree of look and feel. They both support multiple views or multiple layouts. They both have a web-based design interface. They both now have a behavioral framework for events and triggers and causing other things to happen. And they both have a set of standard out-of-the-box tools. Obviously, there's a map and a layer list and a legend, identify, search, feature summary, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of similarities. Where are they different? Well, here's where I think they're different. First of all, web in particular is more focused on enterprise and framework than Experience Builder. So 3 specific examples. Web's unique in offering out-of-the-box WCAG or Section 508 accessibility compliance. Experience Builder does not do this. Web is unique in offering full application internationalization support. A lot of our international customers who are building applications in multiple languages very quickly realize, hey, wait a minute, Experience Builder doesn't support that, but web does. So that is a framework example. And then lastly, the ability for web to allow you to build a small custom component and actually just include that in your SaaS hosted environment is unique to web. You can't do that with Experience Builder in the cloud or in the SaaS environment. So those are 3 framework specific examples. Then you get into application management. As many of you know, we're now in this world of Esri portals. This might be ArcGIS Online. This might be Enterprise Portal. It can get tricky to begin to manage your applications. And so VertiGIS Studio Web has really leaned into this and tried to provide you with tools. And we didn't just give you one thing early and then stop. We've actually been iterating on this over time. So you can see the 4 sub-bullets there. It's about the initial deployment, but it's also about updating those items after the fact without actually changing the IDs so that everything's still connected. Creating copies of items so that you can make changes to your development environment without affecting production. Support for moving content between different Esri portals. So this might be one ArcGIS Online org to another ArcGIS Online org, ArcGIS Online to on-prem, on-prem to ArcGIS Online, or between 2 on-prem enterprise portals. And then recently, even supporting custom script logic so that during that deployment process, you can actually call out to a webhook and run your own logic to move data around or do some other changes. So this is something that, again, it's very framework, it's very enterprisey, and it is unique to web. Enterprise does, or sorry, not enterprise, Experience Builder does not offer any of these capabilities. And then lastly, just in terms of enterprise app focus, so web differentiates itself a lot from Experience Builder just with a lot of enterprise level considerations. So things like our Save Project functionality, where you can store your application state and then resume work the next day, or share it with someone else in your organization, being able to take UI elements and actually hide them or show them for different users and roles, so the interface is beginning to adapt itself to a user or to a role. Being able to configure very specific map views, so not just a bookmark, but actually like I need a map view that only shows these layers, hides these other layers from the layer list, has this transparency, this scale range. You know, that is a really important aspect of many enterprise applications. And again, it's kind of a unique consideration, as it were, in web. And then also integrating with other enterprise systems, so URLs and launching and parameters and all the rest of that stuff. Now, I fully expect that Experience Builder will get that last bullet point pretty darn soon, but today they don't have it. So those are some enterprise specific examples. And then last slide here for me is focus. So maybe this is helpful for you as you're thinking about whether it's time for you to use web or you're choosing between web or Experience Builder. Maybe it's helpful for you when you're trying to talk to other people in your organization. But really for VertiGIS, our business depends on the success of web. For Esri, Experience Builder is obviously not a sole focus. They do a lot. Web has shown a track record of leading. So Web was the first to market. Web was released long before Experience Builder. We were the first ones with charts and KPI cards. We were the first ones with events and triggers. So we're trying very, very hard to lead the way with the viewer framework. For us at VertiGIS, VertiGIS Studio Web represents our 6th generation viewer framework. We did one for ArcMS, we did one for WebADF, we did one for Flex, we did one for Silverlight. We did one that you know and love for JavaScript 3.x, that's the GeoCortex viewer for HTML5, and this now is the 6th. And lastly, if you compare VertiGIS's mature viewer framework on Esri JavaScript 3.x, so that's GVH with Web App Builder as mature products in market, you know, which of those is more robust, which of those better solves the problems. My strong view and commitment is that a year or two from now, when you put a mature VertiGIS Studio Web beside a mature Experience Builder, you're going to be pretty happy with Web. So if those slides are helpful for you, either in making a decision yourself or in talking with others in your organization, I hope that that was useful. All right, let's talk about ArcGIS platform. You may know that there is this new offering from Esri called ArcGIS Platform. It is more of a API key model for consuming ArcGIS services. And I just want you to know that this is supported today in VertiGIS Studio Web. And in the version coming in mid-October, there will be a configuration interface there to make it even easier to access than it is today. And we are actually using this internally within VertiGIS. The product that I briefly showed you earlier called VertiGIS FM is actually now using VertiGIS Studio Web with the ArcGIS platform as its method of authentication. So that is kind of an interesting and useful use case. And I just thought it was worth briefly showing this to you because sometimes you hear about these things and then you're like, where on earth do I go to do that? So this is a not yet released version of VertiGIS Studio Web. And in simple terms, you are going to go into allowing me to actually access the application. That was unscripted. All right, so if and when you want to use this, you go to the Services tab, you go to your App Service, and down at the bottom of your App Service, there is an optional place to put your Platform API key. The way these Platform API keys from Esri work is when you sign in and build the key, you are specifically saying this key uses, for example, routing, and that's it. That's what it does. It's just for routing. And then the JavaScript 4 API is smart enough to say, if I have a Platform API key to fulfill a function, I will use that first. And then if I don't, I will fall back to other mechanisms of authentication, such as a named user or something like that. So Platform is supported today in VertiGIS Studio Web. Soon you will have the convenient place to plug that API key in. And by all means, check it out if that is of interest to you. And that was my demo. All right, what about Esri? Let's talk about ArcGIS Enterprise 11. I just thought I'd give you a brief update on this. Our quality assurance department within VertiGIS has been hard at work validating ArcGIS Enterprise 11. Almost all products across VertiGIS Studio and GeoCortex Essentials have now been at least broadly verified against ArcGIS 11. So far, we haven't found any issues on existing Esri functionality. So that means, you know, a feature layer viewing and, you know, manipulating and editing, whether it's in web or whether it's in the GeoCortex viewer for HTML5, works today. What still needs to happen is there are some new capabilities in Enterprise, some new layer types and things, and we need to just go through and make sure, how do those behave? Do they break anything? Those kinds of questions. So stay tuned. Very, very soon, you should see something on our announcements community forum that says, hey, yeah, testing is complete. These are the versions of products that are compatible. So if that is something that you've been waiting for, it's not too far away. All right, now speaking about web, there are a few additional bits and pieces we should talk about for web. Obviously, a key part of this Road Ahead webinar for many customers today is about what features and functions are coming in web, when will they arrive, so you can plan your upgrades and such. And you can see here, sometimes it's worth just summarizing. So fast, flexible, enterprise-ready WebJS applications on Esri's JavaScript 4.x. And when you see that enterprise-ready, you now have all those other slides that I showed you around positioning web and experience builder and why we make that statement. So here is the current view of the VertiGIS Studio Web roadmap. In the top right-hand corner, we have arriving soon for the bigger features. We have snapping. I know many of you are still waiting for this, as we are too. We really want to get it out there. We've recently reorganized a couple of people internally to try and get more effort onto this to get it out to you even sooner. It is, I don't think, going to be in the October release. Believe it or not, that's still a question mark. There's a piece of it that maybe we can get in, but we're not sure. So it's arriving soon, can't say exactly when. But what I can tell you, and I think is really, really interesting, is in addition to a really quality snapping experience out of the box for almost all the common use cases, we are also doing quite a lot of behind the scenes work, both on the markup granularity or the drawing granularity, but also on the rules engine around snapping, so that we can better support things like construction geometry use cases and utility network validation use cases. So if you're just waiting for the basic snapping, that's coming pretty soon, and we are working on these other pieces as well to be able to extend it. Data linking support. It's kind of a good news, bad news story. The good news is that all the underlying infrastructure, the plumbing, all that good stuff is actually going to be in the next release of VertiGIS Studio Web. The bad news is you're not really going to be able to take advantage of it yet until I get the configuration interface built for you. I toyed with the idea of giving you some instructions on how to use it without a user interface, but I don't think very many people would be successful based on my own use of it. So unfortunately, I think you're going to have to wait for the December release for the user interface around data linking, but very much in progress. As I said, all the infrastructure is actually going to be in the October release. And then improving the add layer experience. So today, when you add a layer in VertiGIS Studio Web, you get a little portal item picker dialog, and you can select a couple of things. But there were some obvious things missing. How do I decide whether I want public content or not? How do I filter on some other common filters to be able to better narrow this down to exactly the experience that I'm working on? And then if you're a historical user of our layer catalog, we put a very early version of a layer catalog experience into web that was based on you defining a set of tags that needed to match and restricting content to that, but you couldn't interact with those tags. You couldn't say, well, actually, I'm only interested in this one. And so we've also made some improvements around that in this new add layer experience. I'm pretty confident that will be in the October release based on where it is today with the team. What else are we working on? Currently, the editing isn't working. You're not actually able to edit related tables. That wasn't intentional. And we're working on fixing it. And we are working on a starred results set feature as well. This is kind of the classic Silverlight or GeoCodex Viewer for HTML5 feature, where your users want to do an identify and go, yes, I'm interested in these 3 things, and then do a search and say, yes, I'm interested in these 2 things, and then do another identify and say, oh yeah, and add that one too, and then be able to get back to that starred set of results or that curated set of results and then do things with it. And so this is a pretty key feature for a lot of customers. I know I've had conversations and interactions with several of you who've said, really, that's one of the few remaining things that's actually keeping us from moving from the geofix viewer for HTML5 to web. So we are working on that. Don't think it's going to be in the October release, but I'm almost certain it'll be in December. And then there's some other big things that are very much in progress. So the query tool, filter tool is in progress. All the UX and UI work is done, and it's just a matter of starting to actually build code behind the scenes. We are also working on quite a large set of changes around extending the configurability of the results list view, the results summary view, the result details view, just giving you more control over the look and feel. In some cases, the requests are, hey, I just need a far more compact view. In other cases, the requests are, I need an alternate way of showing the feature actions. I don't want a bunch of buttons. I want something much more compact. Or it might be as simple as saying, actually, what I'm really looking for is more control over what actually shows up in the results list, so that most of the time an end user doesn't even really need to click through to the details. So all those things are very much on the radar, and we're working on a set of changes that will give you more control over those. And we are also working on a project sharing subsystem. So those are a few of the things that are coming for web. There are always other little things. Sometimes I forget them until they show up. So I'm sure there will be a couple of others that will be happy surprises when you read the release notes. Let's talk a little bit about the product release calendar. And then actually, usually this is my last slide. This is not my last slide. I'm going to actually pull a few things out from this. So what do we see here that is worth noting? Well, for sure, worth noting VertiGIS Studio Analytics. I believe in the last road ahead, I had that straddling September and October. The team was working really hard to get it out by the end of September. It is going to be October. So we're clearly trying to indicate, yep, expect the first version of VertiGIS Studio Analytics in the October timeframe. And incidentally, I don't think I have slides for this, but I'm really excited about it. Just going through it carefully as we're re-implementing this product, it's the same value propositions for analytics, but a different technology stack. A couple of things we did that I think are just crazy cool. If you are a VertiGIS Studio mobile customer, you're actually using a VertiGIS Studio mobile app, one of the things we've done with VertiGIS Studio Analytics is we've actually made it capable of mobile collecting usage data while it's disconnected and then sending that to analytics when it's reconnected, so that you're getting the value proposition of what is that end user's user experience on a mobile device when they're disconnected, and you can actually learn from that and adjust your app accordingly. So some exciting stuff there. The 1.0 version that is coming out does support VertiGIS Studio Web and VertiGIS Studio Mobile in terms of viewer clients and gathering data from them. So keep an eye open for that for sure. The other thing I really wanted to highlight here, well, two things, I guess. One is VertiGIS Studio Search. I think that's in the same place it was last time this was presented. We are still working on a first version of that for October. But VertiGIS Inline, the 2.0 version, so we went from 1.x to 2.0, came out in August. And I'm actually going to highlight that a little bit. So what is VertiGIS Inline? VertiGIS Inline is all about taking linear reference data and transforming and visualizing it into a whole bunch of dynamic and interactive charts. It's a much better way of visualizing and interacting with linear referenced data. We've been doing a ton of work on this over, well, the last 6 months to a year. So you can see the list of noteworthy things. Some of them are small changes, but super important for quality of life, like the first bullet, being able to actually create chart symbology directly from the map service rather than having to redefine it, things like that. But then all the work that was done around being able to support inline on an iPad tablet connected, and being able to track your location and actually follow along some of this data was really pretty key. And one of the big changes that happened at 2.0, and just to call this out to make sure you're clear on it, when we went from 1.x to VertiGIS Studio Inline 1.x to VertiGIS Inline 2.0, a little bit of a name change there, and that's because we're no longer thinking of inline as a technology toolbox component that you just pick up and put anywhere. You put it in Web App Builder, you put it in Experience Builder, you put it here, you put it there. Instead, we're really focusing inline in on the value proposition that it delivers to the market. And we had very consistent feature requests from existing customers that made it clear if we were going to be able to deliver on those requests, we needed to pick a deployment platform and kind of take that, deploy it anywhere out of the equation, and instead focus on deliver functionality. So VertiGIS Studio, VertiGIS Inline 2.0 is actually rebuilt as a native web component. So what does that mean? It means this thing now lives inside and is delivered as an additional product option, but it's delivered on top of VertiGIS Studio Web, and it natively has access to all the rest of web. And so what this does is it opens up a whole bunch of opportunities from 2D, 3D support, being able to look at the results table and visualize information in the results table, saving application state and restoring it as a saved project, supporting proper dev test prod, all those things that if you're using web, you've come to appreciate in web are now also going to be available as part of VertiGIS Inline. So I know that doesn't affect everyone. Rest assured, if you're currently using VertiGIS Studio Inline 1 point something, that's not going away tomorrow. There's quite a long support cycle on that, but the direction that VertiGIS Inline is moving is to be delivered as a web component, and all these features are coming soon. I think this might be my last slide, which is cool because it means I might have time to actually answer some questions. Through conversation, interactions at the Esri UC, talking to people, emails, talking with partners, lots of places, a consistent piece of feedback we hear is, love your software, love what we can do. You guys have done a good job trying to document everything, but the technical documentation could be better. It's like, okay, great. We're listening, we're doing our best, but we're like, when we try and dig into specifics to actually make change, it's really, really tough for us to figure that out. So I came up with this brilliant, well, I think it's brilliant, of course, because I came up with it. Interesting idea. Let's just use that. Technical writing tells a story. So if you are someone who would put your hand up and say, I agree, I think the technical documentation does need to be improved, and I'm willing to spend 20 minutes on a call with our technical writing lead. Here's the key. I don't need a comprehensive list of every change that needs to be made, because I know that would be all but impossible for you to create. What I do need is a walkthrough, a story of one example where, hey, this was my goal. I was trying to do this thing. I started here. I walked through the documentation here, here, and here. I got to this point, and then I was stuck. I didn't know how to do this thing or where to go next or how to accomplish it. If we can gather a few of those types of stories, I believe we'll start to see the pattern internally of where the weak links are in our documentation and practically how we can improve them. So if you're willing to do this, shoot me an email, let us know. We'll get our technical writing lead in touch with you for a 20-minute call and just walk them through a real example story of a time when you were using it and you got stuck. So this is your opportunity to be heard and provide input. It would be greatly appreciated if you are willing and able to do it. And with that, I'm going to briefly stop sharing my screen. I know, shocking, so that I can actually look at the questions, see what's there. If we can answer a couple live, we absolutely will. And if I can't, you will hear back from me a little later. Let's have a look. Gotta make it bigger. All right. This is always the somewhat painful part where you're trying to read questions. Okay, so already a little bit of feedback on the new Studio Go mobile interface, saying good feedback so far. Sooner it comes out, the better, no problems, etc. So great, thanks, Max, for that feedback. The most current version of Essentials is for 14.5 is the most current version of Essentials. And the simplest way to get access to that is to go to apps.vertigisstudio.com/downloads, which will redirect you to a download center where the software downloads live. Just a couple comments, appreciating the explanation around Experience Builder and web and kind of the differentiation of the enterprise approach. So thanks for the feedback, Jonathan, appreciate that. Brian asked a question about the new query tool and whether it's going to let you join related tables. Good question. I'll get back to you. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. Great question from Brian on the roadmap. It's like, okay, so let me get this straight. Arriving soon is coming before in progress. Generally speaking, yes, that is the case. The things that are arriving soon are further along. In many cases, they are already, all the code is up and in peer review, or all the code is up and is in quality assurance. Whereas the things that are in progress are still usually under active development. They're not fully up for peer review yet, is from my Kanban board kind of how I make some of those decisions. Let's see. So the query filter results interface. So when will that actually be coming? I will do my very best. Katian, thanks for the question. I'll do my very best to get an answer to you. It is a tricky one for me to predict. So that's a tough one, but I would be, well, I'll work backwards. I would be depressed and very unhappy if we haven't delivered it by the middle of next year. And then as we progressively move releases back from that, I would be delighted and surprised if it was in the product by the end of this year. I think that would be a big stretch. So early next year, I'd say is a pretty reasonable expectation. Oh, good. And Alok had a great question about whether there could potentially be an Esri style show attribute table widget in VertiGIS Studio Web. That's a really interesting question for me, because we do have the results table, but of course the results table deals with more than just feature data. It is dealing with all kinds of different result types. And yeah, I do have behind the scenes in my head a plan for a future dedicated VertiGIS Studio Web attribute table component that would be restricted only to server-backed feature data, so that we're never loading all of it. It's all just API calls, filters, searches, that kind of thing. That's pretty consistent with the kind of attribute table that the Esri style widget is. And I also think that if we get there, and I think we will, that it would be that interface, or that new attribute table interface, where I would enable the tabular editing of attribute data, because it's specific to feature data. Oh, you guys are good. Look, you got, I thought I was at the bottom of the questions, and now there's like 4 or 5. I'm going to give a quick scan. I got time for 1 or 2 more. Okay, Andy, it's a great question about utility network, timelines, all that kind of stuff. Short, high-level summary goes like this. We can work with utility network data today. We do it mostly through workflows today. So anything from a trace to, all the stuff you would normally want to do. our colleagues within VertiGIS and other solutions are already kind of delivering those to customers. So it's possible today. Previously, you would have heard from me a statement along the lines of, I'm kind of still waiting for the runtime.NET SDK from Esri and the JavaScript 4 API to support some of the more native utility network functions. Those have started to appear now in the last couple of releases, so I think there are things that can be done in VertiGIS Studio Mobile and VertiGIS Studio Web to start to expose those things. And yeah, I think the short answer is you should expect them sooner rather than later, because we have a big chunk of VertiGIS, whether it's in telecommunications or utilities, that are working with utility network now, and they are also going to be asking for these functions. So you're in good company. Question from Max about, hey, analytics, ArcGIS Monitor, seems like there's some overlap. I'm totally paraphrasing your question, Max. What's the difference? At a super high level, I would explain it like this. ArcGIS Monitor is focused on ArcGIS Enterprise, and it's really focused on the server and the map services, and it's a very service-centric GIS health view of the world. Analytics on purpose is trying to focus more on our end users having a good experience with their apps. If I've got a service request investigation app out in the field, is that app actually returning an investment ROI back to the business? And in order to answer those questions, we focus more on what's happening in the viewers, the tools that's being used. It doesn't matter that the map service ping responds in 100 milliseconds if the end user's request to that map service on a device in the field is taking, 30 seconds. So we're focused far more on the application and the end user's experience. Now, there is, of course, an overlap because we have to know some of that underlying information as well, but really it's a different value focus. All right. That is indeed, Timothy, a Scottish sword upon my wall from when I did a work posting in Scotland. Yes, indeed. All right. Thanks, guys. I'm going to call it there. Appreciate your time. If I didn't get to your question, you absolutely will hear from me by email. I know you guys are busy. I know there's a ton going on. I super appreciate you taking the time to be here with me today to learn a little bit more about VertiGIS Studio. Feel free to send me a note. Tell me if you like that format. I don't know that I would do that format every time, but I thought it was worth doing this time. I'd probably go back more to a VertiGIS Studio product by product format in the future, but thought it was worth sharing. So thanks again. Have a fantastic day, guys, and we will talk to you all soon.